Y hace rato,
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I guess. Bring it home.
Shit.
Yeah. What's that? Right.
Okay. Class is starting in 5 minutes, dear.
And I have to leave from here, yeah.
Yes.
I understand.
Unless you want to be part of the live broadcast.
Yeah. Another one of the dogs. Yeah, I understand. Well, some places you want to make a name for yourself. Well, some places want to make. Well, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, good evening. It is June 21st. 2 days late on the class because we had a little bit of a technical difficulty at ITD for trying to transmit this. So I'm doing a rebroadcast today, and we will be going through our lessons and slides. We have a little bit of club maintenance we have to do first. As far as getting emails, I have created a mailing list external to the county's network. The email address is itdphotoclub, all one word, at freelists.org. I sent an email to everybody on the existing list, and what I need you all to do is I need you all to subscribe to the new list. The email I sent out gave you instructions on how to do that. Once we do that, we will be able to have easy back and forth discussions, because all you have to do to mail the whole group is send an email to itdphotoclub at freelist.org, and it will be sent to everyone in the club. Okay? Now, we have some rules regarding that. One is don't spam. Keep it photography related. Don't wander off onto other topics. Okay? Please check with me if you want to put some equipment up for sale or something like that first, and I'll let you know if it's okay. And as always, if you hear of an event or a gallery exhibition, or you're having a gallery exhibition, you're more than welcome to send that information to the list. I hope this list will grow, and it will also make sure that we are not subject to any weird rules that get put on us because we're using work equipment. So anyway, with that said and done, time to go to the slides. Okay, so here's our slide deck. Yes, the date's wrong because it's 2 days later, but you know what? Bob got to see it first. So here we go. So we're going to do the beginner's class as always. We have Camera Basics 3B, where we will continue to talk about lenses, lens selection, and use cases for the lenses. Now, in the last class, we talked about the three general different kinds of lenses: wide angle, normal, and telephoto. So what we're going to do in this class is we're going to examine use cases and see which is the right lens for the job, so you know when to pick the right lens, or if you're using a zoom, to go and set it to the right zoom level. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is go over the different types, and we're going to create we're going to go through see when you're going to use them. So first up is when to use which lens. Okay, so we identified the lenses by their focal length. Remember, it's the length in millimeters of the lens. And we grouped them into three broad categories: wide angle, normal, and telephoto. So, the use cases for wide angle lenses. Now you recall, wide angle lenses are lenses in general whose focal length in terms of full frame 35 millimeter, I have to say that because you have to adjust for the size of your sensor, is less than 40 millimeters and have a field of view that is wider than human vision. Okay, they are most commonly used for landscapes. They are also used in photojournalism in the 24 to 35 millimeter range. Beyond that, it's too wide and you can't really see what's going on unless you're shooting a big crowd. then you're using the right lens. And also, if you're doing event photography, what I like to call intimate event photography, get your mind out of the gutter. This means where you're in a small space and you don't have a lot of room to back up and take big group shots. You're going to use a wide-angle lens close up to get photos of the folks. Just remember, when you do that, you're going to need to process those images afterwards to make lens corrections in software before you send them pictures and that make them look really fat. We'll talk about that a little bit. The next one, and here's a sample. So this was from my recent trip to Yosemite, and that is Half Dome. This was taken with a lens at 28 millimeters. So it's an amazing place, and that mountain is much bigger than it looks, but because I'm using a wide-angle lens, it actually looks kind of small. So the next case is the normal lens. As we recall, normal lenses fall between 40 and 60 millimeters, and they approximate the human field of vision. Okay, and use cases include, but are not limited to, remember, these are rules of thumb, they're not laws. Close-up portraits, photojournalism, event photography in general, and you can do landscapes with them. Here's an example of a portrait. And you see my son there in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. So, for the next one, we have the use case for telephoto lenses. Telephoto lenses, longer than 60 millimeters, have a narrow field of view than normal lenses and can make distant objects seem closer. Okay? Lenses, short telephoto lenses that are between 75 and 135 millimeters are often prized by portrait photographers because of their ability to render the out of focus parts of the image, which is known as bokeh, specifically in the 85 millimeter range. Remember, this is in full frame 35 millimeter reference. Accommodate your focal length based on your sensor crop. Okay. Common use cases for this include, but are not limited to, portraits, sporting events, because you don't want a 400-pound tackle falling on you, bird photography, because birds are skittish, photojournalism, including the paparazzi. Yes, they use long telephoto lenses. And weirdly enough, landscapes. Yes, landscapes can also benefit from telephoto lenses because sometimes you can't get close to this amazing piece of landscape and you want it to fill the frame. So you use a telephoto lens. Case in point. Again, from my trip to Yosemite, this is Upper Yosemite Falls. This is specifically called Upper Yosemite Falls and Tree. You will notice that there is a very small tree right there, and I managed to spot that and line it up for the shot. So that's this one. And again, for portraits, one of my favorite subjects, it's my cat Prince Zeus, and this was done with a 75 millimeter f1.4 lens. That's the effective field of view, effective focal length, because it was a 50 on my crop sensor Fuji. You'll see that the bokeh on this lens, and this was an old Pentax lens that I adapted to use on my Fuji, and you can see that his eyes and his nose and his whiskers are nice and sharp, but everything around him, which was basically my Florida room, is melted. I mean, even his ears start to get out of focus. So that's how shallow the plane of focus is on this lens. It's quite an amazing lens, and the best part about it is I picked it up for $30 on eBay. One of the amazing advantages of mirrorless lenses. So that pretty much does it for the beginning class. It's to help guide you on what lens to use for what situation. Again, these are rules of thumb. They're not hard and fast rules. So, moving on to the advanced class, we have specialty lenses. Now, specialty lenses are hard to categorize because they do something very specific, but can fall into any or all of the three categories we said before. So you can have wide-angle versions, normal versions, and telephoto versions as well. And these are very specialized lenses for very specific types of photography. First up, you have fisheyes and ultra-wides. Now, wide lenses are prone to something called barrel distortion. And this happens when your lens is has a very wide angle and you're going to take a photograph, and what happens is that your sensor is not the same distance from all parts of the subject because physics. And so you might suffer from something called barrel distortion, where the middle of the image is sort of pushed forward to you. And in some cases, the edges of the image can wrap around and curve. As you can see here, that these buildings are curved when you know perfectly well that they're straight. Ultra wides and fisheyes do that. They are prized for that. They are encouraged to do that. That particular image is done with a 12mm ultra wide. With a fisheye lens, you would actually see a circular image. It would be round. So those are special purpose, and they have amazing depth of field without having to. You barely ever have to focus an ultra wide or a fisheye lens. It's amazing. Okay. So the next one are macro lenses. So macro lenses have the ability to focus very short distances from the subject and present the subject matter in 1:1, meaning they're life size in the image. So you tend to point them at very small things because you wouldn't need a macro image of an elephant. But like our little frog here, he's actually the size of the print would show how big he actually is. Now, they range in wide angle to telephoto in focal length. And a lot of times, because you're working at such short distances, lighting the subject can be difficult, and they actually made special flashes for macro lenses that actually literally mount as a ring on the front of the lens. So you're, instead of being mounted on top of the shoe, you're actually mounted on the front of the lens as a ring, and you're lighting up your subject right from there. When we talk about lighting, we'll talk about those specialty flashes as well, because they have other uses. Another specialty lens, and this is kind of the weirdest one, this is the tilt-shift lens. The tilt-shift lens is a very odd duck, because the back half of the lens is a separate part from the front half of the lens. And the two are connected by a series of geared movements that allows the front end to tilt up and down, or left and right, and can also shift up and down, or left and right. Now, these were originally created to mimic the actions of old view cameras. Remember the old view cameras that you would put the cloth over your head, and there was a big plate, and there was a leather bellows. Well, you could actually take the front piece of that camera, the front part of the camera, and tilt it or move it up and down and shift it around as you saw fit for making corrections. Now, this was used a lot in architectural photography to correct parallax. Parallax happens when you go up to a big tall building and you take a photograph of it, and no matter how rectangular the building is, it becomes pointy. And the only time that works is if you're taking a picture of the Transamerica Tower in San Francisco, which is pointy to begin with, or the pyramids. But most other buildings are not. So by being able to shift the front half of the lens and tilt it, you can keep the sensor parallel with the building, but then move the lens to encompass the building so that you do not have parallax. One of the strange side effects of this ability, which by the way is called the Scheimpflug effect, is that tilt-shift lenses have two other useful functions. One is product photography, because when you're close up, like when you were with the macro lens, a lot of times what happens is that your plane of focus is so thin that you may have to take multiple photographs of the same subject at different points, at different depths, and then stack them together to get a stacked image. To avoid that, you can use a tilt shift lens, and using that very strange name, the Scheibenflug effect, you're going to actually tilt the plane of focus. So let's say you're taking a picture of a shoe, and normally you'd be like this, the plane of focus would be like this on the shoe, and then you'd have to take more than one picture to get the whole shoe. But by using a tilt shift lens and the Scheibenflug effect, what you basically do is you tilt the plane of focus so it's parallel with the shoe. So now your whole shoe is in focus and you take it in one shot. Another weird side effect is what you see on that image up there. If you take a wide angle shot at a distance using a tilt shift lens and you tilt it, you will make whatever it is, no matter how big and real it is, to be a tiny little model. Now, yes, there's software that can do this online and even in several applications or plugins for Lightroom and for Photoshop, but the best way to do this has always been with a tilt shift lens. The next one we're going to talk about is the soft focus lens. Soft focus lenses. Now, lenses have been always designed to be as sharp as they can be, clinically sharp, as a fact. It's a term used for a lot of modern designs. But some of the older lenses were designed to be sharp in the middle and really fuzzy on the edges. And I'm not talking about bokeh per se but it's like a unique kind of bokeh. There are several different kinds that have been made over the years, and recently, with the advent of crowdfunding and the internet and computer-aided design, smaller companies have been able to manufacture and resurrect old lens designs that were known for their interesting out-of-focus capabilities. And one, in fact, is the Petzval. This particular image is taken with a Petzval lens. It's being sold by a company called Lomography. They're actually not terribly expensive. A 55mm Petzval for mirrorless cameras is available, and it's around $399 with an aluminum body. You can also get a brass body if you're feeling really old-timey. They have an interesting function that you can actually change the shape of the bokeh with metal inserts. The standard metal insert is a circle, but you can have stars, hearts, and all kinds of strange shapes, which will make if you have like blobs of light in the background, it will turn them into whatever shape that insert is. So it'll be little hearts or little stars or whatever. And you can actually do that yourself without having to buy a fancy schmancy lens. Just get a piece of construction paper, pop a hole in the shape, a very small hole in the shape of the shape you want the bokeh to appear, and then point at a bunch of lights and make sure the camera's really out of focus, and you'll see them turn into the shape that is represented in the construction paper you've put over the front of the lens. Again, this image in particular was taken with a Petzval lens, which is known for having swirly bokeh. If you look carefully in the background, you can see that everything appears to look like it's almost spinning when it actually isn't. That's just the way the lens renders the out of focus parts. It's a very interesting way to do it. Anyway, so that's it for our lens selections and our specialty lenses. There's only 2 people online, so I guess we're not going to have a lot of questions at this point. I hope you have questions for me. Anyway, the next monthly... Okay, so last month's challenge was a sign of the times. And you had to go and take a photograph of a sign. The sign was to be the star of the photograph. Either it was an interesting sign in and of itself, like the one I put about don't touch the geishas, or a sign set in an interesting situation. Now, this month's challenge, and we've always been going on about the rules of photography and what you have to do to take a good photograph. But remember, they aren't really rules, they're just suggestions. So this month's challenge is rules? What rules? Deliberately break any or all of the rules of good photography and take an image. Okay? For example, this photograph that I took at the Coit Tower breaks the rule of thirds. I do not have my subject, my wife, son, and his girlfriend, taking up the bottom 2/3 of the image. nor the background image, nor is Coit Tower taking up the bottom 2/3 or the top 2/3. It's taking up the whole image. Yet, it's still a pretty good photograph. And by the way, there's a perfect example of the parallax I was talking about. Had I a tilt shift lens, this would have been, I would have had a straight Coit Tower. But anyway, so you are to take a series of images, breaking the rules. As usual, the usual rules apply, 3 images max for submission, and then we will judge them at the next meeting. Looking over at our Flickr group page, I can see that no one has submitted any signs, which is very sad. And we need to remedy this next month. So we have 2 challenges to be able to go and judge. Come on, you people. The whole point of this is to do these exercises because that's how you get better at stuff. So unless any one of the people online have any questions, I do believe that's going to be about it for me. So I will be online. I'm going to flip over to my full screen for a few minutes and wait for you all to come and send me some questions if you want on the chat room. Okay. Don't forget. Do your homework, and that we have our new mailing list to use. All right. All future announcements will be sent through the mailing list. You can put your own personal email there if you like. That would actually be better than using your county one. But as long as you can see them, and we'll be able to send it to you automatically. Again, the mailing list is itdphotoclub at freelists.org. And I sent an email to everyone today with instructions on how to subscribe. Anyway, if no one has any questions, I'm going to leave it at that. And hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you in July.